A century-old Canadian institution is collapsing before our eyes, and the people in charge are pretending everything is fine. For generations, wearing the postal uniform meant job security, community respect, and a guaranteed path to the middle class. Today, it's become a nightmare of temporary contracts, impossible workloads, and a crown corporation bleeding money so fast it's headed for insolvency. Here's what's shocking. This isn't just about email replacing letters. We're talking about a complete systematic breakdown of everything that made the Postal Service work. Record losses of $841 million in 2024 alone. 7 straight years in the red, a 32-day strike that cost another $200 million, and a workforce so demoralized that experienced carriers are quitting faster than they can be replaced. But the real tragedy isn't the money, it's what this represents. The Postal Service used to be proof that public institutions could work better than private companies. Fair wages, excellent benefits, career advancement, and service that reached every Canadian, no matter where they lived. Now it's become everything Canadians hate about modern corporate culture: cost-cutting, worker exploitation, and service cuts disguised as modernization. The number one problem destroying this institution isn't competition or technology. It's management decisions that have systematically destroyed worker morale while making service worse and more expensive. And the workers who built this service, they're being thrown under the bus by executives who care more about spreadsheets than the people who actually deliver the mail. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to expose exactly how the Postal Service went from Canadian success story to national embarrassment. From the wage cuts that drove away experienced workers to the service changes that betrayed rural communities, you'll understand why this collapse was inevitable and why it represents everything wrong with how we treat public institutions in Canada. Before we dive into the disaster, let me remind you what working for the Postal Service used to mean. This wasn't just a job, it was a career that offered dignity, security, and genuine opportunities for advancement. Letter carriers and postal workers earned middle-class wages that could support a family. The benefits were excellent: comprehensive health coverage, dental care, and a pension plan that guaranteed a comfortable retirement. These weren't minimum wage jobs, they were careers that attracted skilled, dedicated workers who took pride in their work. The training was extensive and thorough. New employees learned not just how to sort mail or walk routes, but how to serve their communities. They understood that they were part of an essential service that connected Canadians across the country. The work was demanding, but it was meaningful. Advancement opportunities were real and accessible. Mail carriers could become supervisors, then managers, then executives. The organization promoted from within and valued experience and dedication. Workers who started on the loading dock could end up running entire facilities. The job security was unmatched. Postal workers knew they could build their lives around stable employment that wouldn't disappear due to economic downturns or corporate restructuring. This security allowed them to buy homes, raise families, and contribute to their communities. The respect was genuine. Postal workers were seen as essential community members who provided a vital service. They knew their customers by name, understood their needs, and took personal responsibility for ensuring mail was delivered safely and on time. The work-life balance was reasonable. While the job was demanding, workers had predictable schedules, adequate time off, and protection from excessive overtime. The organization understood that burned-out workers couldn't provide good service. Those days are gone forever, and what replaced them is a corporate nightmare that would be unrecognizable to the workers who built the Postal Service into a Canadian institution. The numbers tell a story of complete financial collapse that's been building for years but reached crisis levels in 2024. The Postal Service posted a loss before tax of $841 million, marking its 7th consecutive annual loss and bringing total losses since 2018 to over $3.8 billion. But the 2024 loss was particularly devastating because it came despite efforts to cut costs and improve efficiency. Revenue declined by $800 million, a 12% drop that shows the fundamental business model is broken beyond repair. The 32-day strike in late 2024 added another $208 million to the losses, but the strike was a symptom of deeper problems, not the cause. Workers went on strike because they were being asked to accept wage cuts and benefit reductions, while the organization was already losing money hand over fist. Letter mail volume has collapsed from 5.5 billion pieces in 2006 to just 2 billion in 2024, a 64% decline that has destroyed the revenue base that once supported the entire operation. But the delivery network has actually grown larger, with millions more addresses to serve with far less revenue per stop. The parcel business that was supposed to save the organization has been decimated by competition. Market share fell from 62% in 2019 to just 29% in 2023 as Amazon built its own delivery network and private competitors expanded aggressively. The debt load has become unsustainable. Years of borrowing to fund operations and capital investments have created interest payments that consume an ever larger share of declining revenues. The organization is borrowing money to pay interest on money it already borrowed. Pension obligations are another massive burden. The organization has committed to pension benefits for current and former employees that it simply cannot afford given current revenue levels. These obligations will continue growing even as the workforce shrinks. The government has been reluctant to provide direct subsidies, leaving the Postal Service caught between political pressure to maintain service levels and financial reality that makes those service levels unaffordable. While the organization was losing money, management decided the solution was to attack the very workers who had built the Postal Service into a respected institution. The betrayal of postal workers represents one of the most shameful chapters in Canadian labor relations. Wages have been deliberately suppressed below inflation rates, meaning postal workers are actually earning less in real terms than they did a decade ago. The current average hourly wage of $25 might sound reasonable, but it represents a significant decline in purchasing power compared to historical levels. The benefits that once made postal work attractive have been systematically eroded. New hires receive inferior pension plans, reduced health coverage, and fewer paid days off. The two-tier system creates resentment and destroys the solidarity that once characterized the workforce. Job security has been eliminated through the massive expansion of temporary and term positions. Instead of hiring permanent workers with full benefits, management relies on a rotating cast of temporary employees who receive minimal training and have no investment in the organization's success. Working conditions have deteriorated dramatically as routes have been restructured to cover more ground with fewer workers. Carriers are expected to deliver more mail and parcels over larger areas while dealing with increased traffic, aggressive dogs, and weather conditions that make the job increasingly dangerous. Forced overtime has become routine as management refuses to hire adequate staff to handle the workload. Workers are required to work extra hours whether they want to or not, destroying any semblance of work-life balance and contributing to burnout and injury rates. The injury rates among postal workers have increased significantly as workloads have intensified and safety measures have been reduced. Workers are getting hurt more often and more severely, but management treats injuries as inconveniences rather than serious safety issues. Training has been reduced to bare minimum levels, leaving new workers unprepared for the demands of the job. The comprehensive training programs that once ensured quality service have been replaced with brief orientations that focus more on speed than safety or service quality. While attacking workers, management also systematically destroyed the service quality that had made the Postal Service a source of national pride. Every change was designed to cut costs, regardless of the impact on customers or communities. The elimination of door-to-door delivery for millions of Canadians was the most visible betrayal of the service mandate. Families who had received mail at their doors for generations were forced to walk to community mailboxes, often in dangerous weather conditions or unsafe locations. Delivery frequency was reduced in many areas, meaning mail that used to arrive daily now comes every other day or less frequently. This change particularly hurt businesses and seniors who depend on timely mail delivery for essential services and communications. Post office closures in rural and small-town communities eliminated access points that had served as community gathering places for decades. These closures forced residents to travel long distances for basic postal services, creating hardship for elderly and disabled Canadians. Service standards were quietly relaxed, meaning mail that used to be delivered within specific time frames now takes longer with no accountability for delays. The reliable service that businesses and individuals depended on became unpredictable and unreliable. Customer service became virtually non-existent as staff was cut and remaining employees were overwhelmed with increased workloads. Simple problems that used to be resolved quickly now require multiple visits or phone calls with no guarantee of resolution. The tracking and accountability systems that customers expect from modern delivery services were never properly implemented, leaving customers with no way to know where their mail is or when it will arrive. This lack of transparency destroyed trust and confidence in the service. Special services like registered mail and express delivery became more expensive while becoming less reliable. Customers were paying more for services that worked worse than they used to, driving them to private competitors who offered better value. The root cause of the Postal Service's problems lies in management decisions that have consistently prioritized short-term cost savings over long-term sustainability and service quality. Executive compensation has remained high even as the organization loses money and cuts worker benefits. Senior managers continue receiving bonuses and raises wages while demanding wage freezes and benefit cuts from the workers who actually provide the service. Strategic planning has been virtually non-existent, with management lurching from one cost-cutting initiative to another without any coherent vision for the organization's future. Each new plan contradicts the previous one, creating confusion and instability throughout the organization. The decision to compete directly with private courier companies was a strategic disaster that diverted resources from core postal services while failing to generate sustainable profits. Management tried to be everything to everyone and succeeded at nothing. Technology investments have been poorly planned and executed, with expensive systems that don't work properly and don't integrate with existing operations. Millions of dollars have been wasted on technology projects that have made operations less efficient rather than more efficient. Labor relations have been poisoned by management's adversarial approach to dealing with workers and unions. Instead of working collaboratively to solve problems, management has chosen confrontation and blame, creating a toxic work environment that drives away good employees. The franchise model for rural post offices has been a disaster that has reduced service quality while increasing costs. Private contractors running post offices have less training, fewer resources, and different incentives than dedicated postal employees. Outsourcing of key functions has reduced quality control and increased costs while eliminating good jobs. Functions that were once performed by skilled postal workers are now contracted out to companies that pay lower wages and provide inferior service. Management has consistently underestimated the challenges facing the organization, while overestimating their ability to solve problems through cost-cutting. The result has been a series of failed initiatives that have made problems worse rather than better. The Postal Service's problems have been made worse by political interference from successive governments that have used the organization as a political football rather than treating it as an essential public service. Politicians have imposed contradictory mandates that require the Postal Service to operate like a business while maintaining universal service obligations that no private company would accept. This impossible balancing act has made it difficult to develop coherent strategies or sustainable business models. Funding decisions have been driven by political considerations rather than operational needs. Essential infrastructure investments have been delayed or canceled due to political pressure to reduce government spending, while politically popular but operationally questionable projects have been funded. The regulatory framework governing postal operations is outdated and inflexible, preventing the organization from adapting to changing market conditions. Political reluctance to update regulations has left the Postal Service operating under rules designed for a different era. Government interference in labor relations has made it difficult to resolve disputes and improve working conditions. Politicians have intervened in negotiations and imposed settlements that satisfy no one while creating long-term resentment and instability. The appointment of senior executives has been influenced by political considerations rather than qualifications and experience. This has resulted in leadership that understands politics better than postal operations, contributing to poor decision-making and strategic failures. Public policy debates about the Postal Service have been dominated by ideology rather than evidence, making it difficult to have rational discussions about what changes are needed to ensure sustainability and service quality. The lack of long-term political commitment to Postal Service has created uncertainty that makes planning difficult and discourages investment in improvements. Without political support, the organization cannot make the changes needed to succeed. While the Postal Service was busy destroying itself from within, private competitors were building better, faster, and more efficient delivery networks that have captured most of the profitable business. Amazon has built a delivery network that reaches most Canadians faster and more reliably than the Postal Service. Their investment in technology, logistics, and customer service has set new standards that the Postal Service cannot match with its outdated systems and demoralized workforce. Private courier companies like Purolator, FedEx, and UPS have captured the business market by offering reliable service, real-time tracking, and accountability that the Postal Service has never been able to provide. Businesses have abandoned postal services in favor of private alternatives that actually work. Local delivery companies have emerged in urban areas to provide same-day and next-day service that the Postal Service cannot compete with. These companies are nimble, customer-focused, and unencumbered by the bureaucracy and political interference that plague the Postal Service. Even grocery stores and pharmacies now offer delivery services that are faster and more convenient than traditional mail. The Postal Service's monopoly on delivery has been broken by companies that understand customer needs better than postal management. The parcel market that was supposed to save the Postal Service has been dominated by competitors who invested in modern facilities, efficient operations, and customer service, while postal management was focused on cost-cutting and labor disputes. Digital communication has replaced most of the letter mail that once provided the revenue base for postal operations. Email, text messaging, and online billing have made traditional mail largely obsolete for most Canadians. The competitive landscape has changed permanently, and the Postal Service has no clear strategy for competing effectively. They're trying to compete on price in a market where customers value speed and reliability over low cost. One of the most shameful aspects of the Postal Service's decline has been the systematic abandonment of rural and remote communities that depend on postal services more than urban areas. Rural post office closures have eliminated essential services from communities that have no alternatives. These closures force residents to travel long distances for basic postal services, creating particular hardship for elderly and disabled residents who cannot easily travel. The conversion to community mailboxes has been particularly harmful in rural areas where residents must travel significant distances to reach their mailboxes, often in dangerous weather conditions or on unsafe roads. This change has effectively eliminated mail delivery for many rural Canadians. Service frequency reductions hit rural areas hardest because they already received less frequent service than urban areas. When delivery is reduced from daily to every other day or less, rural residents and businesses suffer disproportionately. The elimination of rural routes has forced remaining carriers to cover much larger areas, reducing service quality and increasing delivery times. Rural mail that used to arrive predictably now comes sporadically, if at all. Rural businesses have been particularly hurt by service reductions because they depend on mail for billing, payments, and communications with customers. The unreliable service has forced many to seek private alternatives that are more expensive but more reliable. The Postal Service's retreat from rural areas has created mail deserts where residents have limited or no access to affordable postal services. This abandonment contradicts the universal service mandate and betrays communities that helped build the country. Emergency services in rural areas have been compromised by postal service cuts because mail delivery often provides the only regular contact with isolated residents. Carriers used to serve as informal safety checks for elderly and vulnerable residents. The economic impact on rural communities has been severe as postal service cuts have made it harder for businesses to operate and for residents to access services. The Postal Service was often the economic anchor for small communities. The 32-day strike in late 2024 wasn't just a labor dispute. It was the inevitable result of years of mismanagement, worker exploitation, and systematic destruction of working conditions. Workers went on strike because they were being asked to accept below-inflation wage increases while dealing with increased workloads, reduced benefits, and deteriorating working conditions. The union was asking for a 23% wage increase over 4 years while management offered only 11.5%. But wages weren't the only issue. Workers were demanding safer working conditions, protection for pregnant and breastfeeding employees, and an end to the excessive use of temporary and contract workers. These weren't unreasonable demands. They were basic workplace rights. The strike cost the organization an estimated $208 million in lost revenue, but the real cost was the further erosion of customer confidence and the acceleration of the shift to private competitors. Businesses and individuals who were forced to find alternatives during the strike often decided to stick with those alternatives permanently. Management's handling of the strike was tone-deaf and counterproductive. Instead of addressing the legitimate concerns that led to the strike, they focused on blaming workers for the organization's problems and minimizing the impact of their own poor decisions. The resolution of the strike didn't address the fundamental problems that caused it. Workers received modest wage increases that still don't keep pace with inflation, and the working condition issues that drove the strike remain largely unresolved. The public relations damage from the strike was enormous. Canadians who were already frustrated with poor service became even more angry when service was completely eliminated for over a month. The strike reinforced the perception that the Postal Service is unreliable and not essential. The timing of the strike during the busy holiday season was particularly damaging to the organization's reputation and finances. Businesses and individuals who needed reliable service during their busiest time of year were left scrambling for alternatives. The strike also revealed the extent to which the organization had become dependent on temporary and contract workers. When permanent employees went on strike, there weren't enough qualified workers to maintain even basic services. While cutting worker wages and benefits, management has wasted hundreds of millions of dollars on technology projects that have failed to improve service or reduce costs. The digital transformation initiatives have been poorly planned and executed, with expensive systems that don't work properly and don't integrate with existing operations. Workers are forced to use multiple incompatible systems that slow down operations rather than speed them up. The automated sorting equipment that was supposed to reduce labor costs has been plagued with problems and requires constant maintenance. When the machines break down, which happens frequently, workers have to sort mail manually anyway, eliminating any efficiency gains. The customer-facing technology, including websites and mobile apps, is outdated and difficult to use. Customers trying to track packages or access services online often give up in frustration and turn to private competitors with better digital interfaces. The investment in electric vehicles and green technology has been poorly managed, with vehicles that don't work properly in Canadian weather conditions and charging infrastructure that's inadequate for operational needs. Data management systems are fragmented and unreliable, making it difficult to track performance, identify problems, or make informed decisions. Management is essentially flying blind because they don't have accurate information about their own operations. The technology failures have created additional costs rather than savings, further worsening the financial situation while failing to improve service quality or worker productivity. The Postal Service can be saved, but it requires fundamental changes to management, mandate, and operations that go far beyond cosmetic reforms. First, the organization needs new leadership that understands postal operations and respects the workers who provide the service. The current management approach of cost-cutting and worker blaming has failed completely and must be replaced. Second, the mandate needs to be clarified and modernized. Either the Postal Service is a public service that receives adequate funding to serve all Canadians, or it's a commercial operation that can focus on profitable services. The current hybrid model satisfies no one. Third, working conditions and compensation must be improved to attract and retain quality workers. The organization cannot provide good service with demoralized, undertrained, temporary workers who have no investment in success. Fourth, service standards need to be rebuilt from the ground up with input from workers and customers. The current service model doesn't work for anyone and needs to be completely redesigned. Finally, the political interference that has prevented rational decision-making must end. The Postal Service needs the freedom to operate efficiently while maintaining its public service obligations. Look, I've just exposed how poor management, political interference, and worker exploitation have destroyed one of Canada's most important institutions. The Postal Service, that once connected our country and provided good jobs for hundreds of thousands of Canadians, has been betrayed by the very people who were supposed to protect it. But this isn't just about mail delivery. It's about how we treat public institutions and the workers who make them function. The destruction of the Postal Service represents everything wrong with the corporate mentality that's infected our public services. If this video opened your eyes to what's really happening to our Postal Service, smash that like button right now. It helps more Canadians understand why this institution is failing and what needs to change to save it. Drop a comment below sharing your own Postal Service experiences. Have you noticed the decline in service? Have you been affected by strikes or closures? Your stories help other Canadians understand the real impact of these failures. Share this video with other Canadians who care about public services and worker rights. This isn't just about mail, it's about the kind of country we want to live in and how we treat the people who serve our communities. Hit that subscribe button for more exposés about how corporate thinking is destroying Canadian institutions. The Postal Service isn't the only public service under attack. Remember, public services belong to all of us, and we have the right to demand that they work properly and treat their workers fairly. Don't let corporate consultants and political interference destroy the institutions that make Canada work.